Welcome back to Accountability is Trending. I'm Chris Hopkin, and with me is Tina Johnson. Hello, Tina.
Good morning, Chris. How are you?
I'm doing wonderful. We got a beautiful morning, don't we?
It is absolutely fabulous.
Well, today we have Eldon Stahl with the John Birch Society. I'd like you to introduce him, Tina.
John Birch Society just had a summit in Salt Lake City, and we were invited by Eldon Stahl. It's a fabulous organization. I absolutely love it. Eldon, how are you today?
Oh, I'm great, Tina. It's great to be here and just it'd be fun to talk with you all.
Awesome. Awesome, awesome, awesome.
So
So,
go ahead, Tina.
nope, you go ahead, Chris.
Today we're going to be discussing uh, things with Eldon. And Eldon, I'm going to let you talk about uh, why uh, what you do with the John Birch Society, okay?
Okay. Well, I'm the local what they call field coordinator, so I'm on staff and my focus is building organization, whether it's with volunteers or fundraising or training of people on principles of liberty and how to defend them and champion them and recognize threats to those things. So a lot of that, of course, is involved in educating people of various levels and on different things related to our history or economics, and part of that is educating voters. We know that if we educate voters, that they will be able to make decisions, um, you know, more clearly because they just have good information when they're deciding who should represent them in various offices.
I remember not too long ago going out and putting up scorecards with you. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Oh yeah. So actually the scorecards idea with the John Birch Society started in the 1970s with what they called the Trim Bulletin. That was only covering the U.S. House at the time. Stood for Tax Reform Immediately. Um, Now, since then, we've expanded that into uh, congressional and state legislative scorecards. So not only do we have the U.S. House, we also have the U.S. Senate and all 50 state legislatures, which is over 5,000 legislators. Um, and every year, for the legislatures, twice a year for the Congress. We have scorecards that anybody can print out, download, and and it's based upon the U.S. Constitution and principles of liberty as how they're scored based on those votes, which are on the floor, not committee votes, but floor votes. So the whole chamber.
And what's being measured with these scorecards? I know I went online and looked at the way, for instance, our senator here locally, Wendy Schuler, votes. And can you expound on that a little bit? And I'd like Tina to chime in on this too, because I know she's running, against Wendy. So I'd like for her to uh, put her thoughts out there too, please.
Okay. Yeah, well, one to preface that, we've found that the average voter unfortunately has a pretty low understanding of who represents them and how. So we can point to, for example, studies that have shown in the past that polled people and said that about 36% even know who represents them in Congress. 56% know what party they're from. And when you get into the state legislature, about 8 in 10 people cannot identify who represents them at the state legislative level. And about half even realize that their state has a constitution. So these are, these type of statistics are pretty worrisome. It shows that, yes, the general public is in need of some education. And so what we measure with these scorecards is based upon the founding principles upon which our country was started. The ideas of limited government, meaning that the government cannot do whatever it wants, which is actually a fairly new and revolutionary type of idea, which makes our country great. Not just the fact that we have a constitution, but the fact that it, it says that the government cannot do whatever it wants, and it can only do specific things that it's empowered to do by the people. And so our country was also founded upon, a lot of people are at least familiar with or heard of the Bill of Rights, the idea that Congress shall make no law about this or that. And those things are so important because the founders learned from history that if government gets into especially certain areas, liberty is at a great threat. And so we have to make sure that our ability to defend ourselves, for example, with weapons, is not threatened. That the people need to have that ability to govern themselves. It just as one of many examples. And so when a bill comes up in the legislature or in Congress, which touches upon some of these key issues, then we look at that and say, okay, should this be included in this scorecard? And we only have room in the scorecard for 6 bills. I know a lot of times people will say, well, you only picked 6 bills or whatever. Well, the fact is that the average person, for most people, we found that's a step up in their understanding. And think of it from a practical standpoint. If I were to put a report of all the bills that, say, your congressman voted on during the year on your doorstep, would you read it? Probably not, right? That would be a waste of a lot of time and effort. So we need to have a snapshot that's meaningful and get it to the average voter, and that can be a starting point for their own education.
Well, and a few years ago was the first time that I'd seen the door knockers, and I was absolutely shocked. And now we get the mailers, and a lot of times the mailers are attacking, upscaling one candidate versus, and there's no way for the average voter without some sort of tool to understand how it really is affecting the community. I am running against Wendy Schuler, and I just want to make it clear that this was not my topic. We asked Eldon to come on, and this is what he'd like to talk about. So I want to make sure everybody knows that. But this is what started my journey when I received those door knockers, when I was like, holy cow, because
Yeah.
I was one of those that you always vote Republican. You just assume they're doing what you think. I'm from the valley. I haven't really been anywhere. I just thought these people were just like me, that they had the same values that they had. I didn't understand what was going on, and now I do.
Yeah, and that's the powerful thing about those scorecards is that, we don't endorse any candidates or say, vote this way or that way for on party or person running. But the scorecards really they do a good job at helping people understand, well, okay, let's praise somebody because they voted well on this, or maybe let's add some criticism, and maybe they didn't think of this. Maybe they should have thought this through a little better on this particular bill. And so we'll get to see a few of those today and, take a look at that. So we can take a look at, what is the Freedom Index? Well, it's put out by the John Birch Society. Our research department is able to go through bills. Now there are different ones, different scorecards, of course, for the Congress and for the state legislatures. And of course, most state legislatures, except for Nebraska, have two chambers, the House and the Senate. But if you go to freedomindex.us, you can look at their methodology, how they're put together. We don't, like a lot of scorecards, we don't tell people beforehand that this or that bill will be scored and put on the scorecard. So it actually makes them, they have to be thinking, well, this might be scored. It makes them more honest, tends to be. At least we feel that way. But it's based upon principles of the U.S. Constitution and liberty, things of that nature.
It holds them accountable.
Yeah, and that's the idea. We want to make sure they're held accountable. Yep. And if you go on freedomindex.us, you can also look at more information, frequently asked questions about, how is this compiled? I know there's one about the Article 5 convention that comes up, because that's being promoted as some sort of liberty type of a thing. Let's change the Constitution. And there's a lot of other questions. You can go in and look at that.
On the convention of states, it seems to be gaining a lot of speed. I'm curious on your thoughts there. I know what my thoughts are. I'm curious on your thoughts, Eldon.
So briefly, on what's marketed as the Convention of States, which previously, for so many years and decades, a lot of people don't realize this, was openly marketed as a constitutional convention. But regardless of the term, both of those things are under the authority of Article 5 of the U.S. Constitution. A short way of summarizing this, why I am opposed to that, or why, especially the John Birch Society or other organizations, is just to point out that, yes, we do have a lot of problems in our country. Very, very few of them can be traced back to something that is at fault, lacking, missing in the U.S. Constitution. And even the proponents of a convention will admit this and say, yeah, really, the Constitution that we have is actually pretty good. And so, of course, that begs the question, well, why do we want to open it up? This doesn't make it there. So there's a lot of inconsistencies there, a lot of logical major leaps that we're asked to take in order to support something like this. Not that we should never amend the Constitution, but if there is something wrong with the Constitution, okay, then we can start that discussion. But for the most part, no. The Constitution is very good.
And that's exactly, I agree with what you're saying there. Absolutely. My biggest thing is they don't follow the rules now. What do you think, if you open it up, what makes you think you're going to follow the rules when they open it up? And that, to me, it's totally illogical to me. If you open it up, to me, that's the devil in the details right there. Once the devil gets in there, it's not good news.
Yeah, which is kind of ironic because a lot of times people are promoting the convention idea and they're openly admitting that the Constitution isn't being adhered to very well currently.
Exactly.
So they do a lot of tap dancing. I've seen some really creative tap dancing when you mention something like that. Like, well, okay, so we're going to amend the Constitution. Are we going to follow it any better if it's amended? Boy, we could get into that, but it just probably for another day. We're going to go into that, but
Exactly. So, I was, so did we already cover who gets rated?
so it's all of U.S. Congress, so all 535 members of the Congress. So there's 100 in the U.S. Senate, 435 in the U.S. House, and that comes out twice a year. Okay. Um, Now for the state legislatures, generally it's once a year for each state legislature that have, sometimes they have special sessions, which is true, but generally they have one general session a
Okay.
year, like Wyoming. And Wyoming's kind of different because every other year we have a budget session, which is shorter, but there's still some things to get through, right?
And did you have another slide that you want to bring up?
Uh, yeah, well, we talked about Wendy Schuler. Maybe we could kind of just bring that up as an example. There are a lot of scorecards I could bring up. Now, just so you know, this is one of the layouts that is an option for you if you go to freedomindex.us. If you want to, you can get what they call um, it's a half page double-sided. That one's just more brief in the descriptions of the bills and maybe for larger um, mass handing out, maybe at a parade or something like that. You can also get, if you can get the full page portrait size, so that's like a regular sheet of paper, double-sided. And then there is the new one, which is a quarter page, like a postcard. It just has a QR code and the lifetime score and the picture of the person that's in office. And so that's nice for mailings or maybe mass distribution. But you can also customize them if you're, distributing them. There is a way to put, say, name, phone, email address if you'd like to contact the person that gave you this or, find out more. Okay, so let's take a look at Wendy Schuler. Her lifetime score, which means ever since I think it was 2021, when the state legislative scorecards were being started, that's her cumulative score for 6 scored votes every year. Now, if you see on this particular scorecard, out of 6 scored votes for this past session, she got 5 X's and 1 star. So you might say compared to her lifetime average, that's a lower score. Because for this particular scorecard, she got 1 out of 6 stars, let's say. So each scorecard, I like to say they're a snapshot, a picture, right? A picture doesn't tell the whole story, but as long as it's not, kind of like maybe we've seen in some media things, people have pointed out they're specifically intended to skew the larger picture. Yeah, this is an accurate, at least snapshot of how she voted on 6 key bills that came to the state Senate floor. And
So
some, oh, go ahead.
I don't know if this is it what is actually being measured here? Is that a fair question?
Yeah. Yeah. So if you look at, there's a brief description and then there's a more detailed description on each scorecard, at least on this format, there is. And some of them go into the fact that, well, really the government should not be in this area constitutionally. And so we should not be helped, like the Medicaid expansion one. I think there's that one on there.
Right.
That, really that's not authorized under the U.S. Constitution. And we should not be expanding that and helping that at the state level, for example. So it's helping apply some of those principles to specific bills that might come before the Congress or legislature. And so did they vote along those principles or did they vote contrary to them?
Okay. And is there any more that you wanted to cover on the actual card themselves, or is there another slide that you wanted to bring up?
Some of them do have cost per household. Some of these scorecards do. When we can do that, that's great. And that puts it in terms of how much does this cost, or maybe save my household if this bill passed. So that's sometimes nice to see, because we also care about money, right? Um, so,
Um,
yep. So we can, yeah, we can look at some other scorecards and things. I don't know if, I suppose I should ask Tina, okay, since we got Wendy Schuler's up here, um, I don't know, maybe you'd say, well, I agree with Wendy how she voted on that, or I disagree. Um, I kind of put you on the spot, but I don't mean to turn into the interviewer, but since we got this one up, that's one thing you can do is, if somebody's running for office, you can say, well, here's a scorecard of the person that's in office. How would you be any different, right?
Right. And one of my biggest things, and we're going to talk to Bob Wharf about some of this afternoon, but one of my biggest things is the public unions and the teachers, the Wyoming Education Association. And a lot of times, the teachers don't even know how much they're paying. I mean, they don't realize that that's an option, that they don't have to be a part of it. Um, and when talking to Wendy Schuler, she will always vote for that. She says that she will always vote to fund education. And to me, that's a big deal. I'm all about funding education. I absolutely love teachers. I remember my favorite teacher, Alan Yagi. Um,
Oh,
so it's not that I'm against teachers, but they make it sound like if you don't vote this way, um, then you will get the hate mail,
hmm.
and to me that is a big one. I want teachers to have the information. They should know everything that the teachers union is doing, and they should know because they've put a lot of money into the No Kings rally, and I've written articles about that one. Um, but that's one thing that this scorecard absolutely tells me is how she will vote in those instances.
So yeah, that's helpful, and yeah, we just saw here we go. Yeah, and you can do this with anybody that's running for office, if they're not in office currently, right? And you can say, well, um, what do you think about this? Would you represent us any differently? And what's your thoughts on that? So yeah, that's
Exactly.
yep.
So
So
I
yeah,
also
we
wondered if you could go over. So like Scott Heiner is at an 83. And what is
okay.
your view on Scott Heiner?
Scott's usually scored pretty well. We do have a slide, I think, in here that shows if you go to freedomindex.us, you scroll down a little bit, you can click on, for example, Wyoming. And what comes up is it says at the top, best state legislators, the ones that scored the highest, right? And then on the bottom, the worst state legislators, the one that scored the lowest. Well, Scott Heiner is among those that scored the best. So he's overall actually doing quite well, um, so far as adhering to principles of liberty, of constitutional principles in the vision of our founders. Um, and so you see, he got 5 stars out of 6. The one that, and this is common with, I think, Bob Wharf as well as Joe Webb. So these are local state legislators. When the bill came up on expanding Medicaid in the sense of, I think it was for children. There's that bill right at the top, right?
Oh,
Um,
adding the birthing centers.
yeah, the birthing centers. And so, and that's kind of what happens, I know a lot of times, and not to make excuses, I guess, but just um, a lot of times in the political world, if it's something to do with children, then it's harder to because it's a sympathetic case, you might say. So it's harder to come out and say, this is socialism and this is expanding Medicaid, which they've always tried to do. So they thought, oh, whoever's pushing expanding Medicaid, I think they said, well, okay, maybe at least we can get them to vote for this. And a lot of them did, right? In the legislature, they said, okay, let's expand Medicaid in this case. But there were a few that said, let's not do that. But, Scott Heiner, he's been actually pretty consistent over the years. You look at his lifetime score. What I'm not sure. I can't really see the on there, but his lifetime score is pretty high, I think,
Is an
as well.
83.
83. Okay, so that's pretty commendable, I would say. Um, and he's good chance he'll be the Speaker of the House. I don't know if he'll run for that, but he has been majority floor leader, and that he's the guy that determines what really comes up for a vote on the House floor. So, that's a powerful, you might say, leadership position.
Right. They did a great job.
So yeah, he's to his credit, he's been against the Constitutional Convention type of thing. So that's been nice that he understands that.
I'm wondering here, understanding the numbers here, when people see the score like 90, 70, 20, what should they understand?
Okay, so 100% would be they got all stars. Uh, Now there's two scores on each scorecard now. In the box at the top, that's their lifetime score. So that's over a longer period of several scorecards at least. Um,
Okay,
or at least since they got in. Now, if they're a brand new legislator, well, then the only scorecard we have on them, it might be just one scorecard, right, for that year if they just got
okay,
in. But at the bottom of the scorecard says, okay, for this particular scorecard of these 6 votes, here's their percentage.
okay. And I guess when they're using these scorecards, basically it's just for their information so they can be better informed, correct?
Yeah, and there is, I believe, a QR code. If a person, let's say they get it in print format. Now they could get it in digital, but either way, um, they can go online and look up, more voting history of that particular incumbent, or they can look at other legislators. There's a link to a whole video series on, constitutional education as well. Um, so yeah, this is can be a starting point for a lot of voters to say, yeah, I need to bone up on, the issues, who's wanting to represent me, and applying some of these principles.
And if could you take just a real brief moment and give us some history on John Birch? I know he is an actual hero as far as I mentioned on one of our podcasts about John helping the fire pilots escape from that first bombing mission, and how the that information was actually suppressed. Could you give just a brief uh, explanation and how the John Birch Society honors John Birch, please?
Yeah, sure. So I'll try to be as brief as possible to give a crash course on who John Birch was. He was a missionary as well as uh, army captain during World War II in China in the Sino-Japanese War. So he arrived in China before the United States got involved in the Pacific War, and he was a fundamental Baptist preacher and building churches and things like that in China. After the U.S. got involved, so this would have been after Pearl Harbor was bombed, the response to that was Jimmy Doolittle and his Flying Tigers coming in, and they bombed Tokyo. They flew over Tokyo, and they either had to crash land or, parachute out and onto mainland China, which was at that time occupied by the Japanese. So they were behind enemy lines. If they got captured, you can imagine the Japanese would have not treated them well. And John Birch was there at the time. He had learned very well how to blend in, but also how to speak Chinese. And he knew how to infiltrate these Japanese lines. And he was asked to help get these men to safety that had, been part of this bombing raid. So he helped get Jimmy Doolittle and his um, um,
The
his
guys that
the Doolittle
survived.
Raiders, yeah, to safety. Eventually, he earned the Legion of Merit. He was awarded the Legion of Merit, so he was highly decorated. Um, However, at 10 years after the war officially ended, he was killed by Chinese communists. And unfortunately, at the time, there were people in the US government who were sympathetic to the cause of Mao Zedong rather than Chiang Kai-shek. They favored him in various ways. That's a long story, but um, how he was killed was covered up. His mother and parents they were not told how he was killed, but the person that came to inform them left some papers unattended, and she was able to find out that no, it was not friendly fire that killed him. He was murdered, bayoneted, shot in the leg as well. Um, and this became a scandal, especially after China fell in 1949 to the communists. Um, and a U.S. senator was able to go in the classified documents and really criticize on the Senate floor, put it in the record that the Truman administration especially had betrayed China into the hands of the communists. And part of that speech included John Birch. Well, a man named Robert Welch uh, that got his attention, and it was what 13 years after John Birch dies. This is 1958, end of 58. Robert Welch, who was a prominent candy manufacturer, if you ever heard of Junior Mints or Sugar Daddy, something like that. He and his brother had the Welch Candy Company, and they invented those products. But he wanted to start a unique organization named in honor of John Birch. And so that's how it got the name of the John Birch Society. He didn't actually found the John Birch Society, but it was named in his honor. Parents gave permission for that.
So the government and government actually squashed uh, his name, and there's been an ongoing campaign to squash the good name, actually. And it's been fortunate that the propaganda against the John Birch Society, I mean, they've done wonderful things to promote government, and the Constitution, and that really has been a wonderful thing, and to educate people on their constitutional rights. And that's one thing that basically is what you've done your whole life, correct?
Yeah, quite a bit. Basically when you start naming names and exposing people that are trying to undermine your liberties, they don't like that. And Robert Welch, who founded the John Birch Society, he also found that out early on. The John Birch Society was unique in bringing up things that a lot of people didn't know about, and it was just new ideas to people. Nowadays, it doesn't seem that difficult to believe, but you can imagine back in the early 60s or late 50s, this was a very new concept. People, their default was, the government would never do that. No,
Oh,
that couldn't possibly be going on. They can't possibly be plotting for a one world government and all these types of things. Nowadays, after the Epstein stuff came out, after the COVID period, after all this. Now there's, a lot more people, instead of saying, the government would never do that, they say, yeah, maybe there's something to that. Maybe there is something. So things have changed quite a bit over the years. The John Birch Society certainly has been vindicated on so many levels.
Yeah.
So the world has changed, but early on especially, there were people that were very there was a very strong campaign, almost probably that would have buried any other organization, to smear the John Birch Society as anything you can imagine that's nefarious or bad.
Right.
And we've weathered all those. So
I'd like to give Tina some closing thoughts here. We're out of time. Tina,
let's see if we can.
I think it was a great conversation. I absolutely love listening to Eldon, and I love listening to and learning the Constitution. I find that there are different views to make people understand things on their level, and I think they do a great job of narrowing it to everyone. I'm tailoring it to everyone so everyone can grab something out of the conversations, and it's been very influential in my journey. So I'm very appreciative.
Well, thank you. That's very nice of you.
I really want to thank you, Eldon, for joining us on our Accountability is Trending podcast here today. And I want everybody to remember that accountability is trending. Well, thank you all for being here today.